Pokemon has been around for a very long time. We've been gifted with over 800 creatures and 7 different regions. Most of us like to trade, battle, or collect them all, and that's what we do share in common. However, though, there is always one thing that is very unique with every different player, and that is their Pokemon team, their party that they're gonna create from absolutely nothing to try and beat the league and become the champion. And like I say, everyone's is different, and I am no stranger to that. So in today's video, I'm going to be going over my Pokemon team for every single region. Now, of course, this would take a long time if I did write a whole paragraph for every single Pokemon, so I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go over a quick sentence as to why that Pokemon was on my team. So don't hesitate though, guys, to drop a comment down below with your Pokemon teams for every region. It's really cool to see the different ideas that people do come up with. Be sure to leave a like as well if you are excited for this video, and make sure to subscribe as well if you are brand new. I do daily Pokemon videos and daily Pokemon streams as well, so who doesn't like that? Now, with all of that out of the way, guys, let's get into the video, and I really hope that you guys enjoy. So starting things off, we're heading over to the Kanto region, the first region that I ever played, and it's definitely the region I put the most hours in. Now, I'm pretty sure I've used every single Pokemon in this region at least once playing through the game, but I definitely had one main team that I would always have if I did really want to just beat the game quickly and everything like that. So starting things off, my starter Pokemon had to be little old Charmander. Who doesn't want a little fire-breathing lizard on the team, especially when you're like a 6-year-old? It's just what dreams are made of. It's just the dream. So I always had Charmander and evolved that into Charizard. Next up, I always caught a Pikachu in Viridian Forest because it's a good electric type. Pikachu was one of my favorite Pokemon playing through the Kanto game. I mean, Ash had it, so I always kind of wanted to be like Ash, you know, how you kind of want to be a Pokemon trainer. So I was like, hey, if I've got a Pikachu on my team, that'll make me a little bit more like this dude that seems to lose every battle. Next up, I had a Nidoran male that I always evolved into a Nidoking. You got it so early on, and I was like, they've just given you this absolute powerhouse. Why would I not put it on my team? You don't have to ask me twice, Pokemon. Yes, you can get the Moonstone in Mount Moon and pretty much get a level 16 Nidoking, but I never did that though because you just didn't learn any moves. I would always get Nidorino up to like level 30 or something like that before I popped that Moonstone. Next up, I always had a Vaporeon on my team. Eevee is of course my favorite Pokemon, but I had to evolve it to just get more power. Obviously getting 3 different selections in Kanto, being Flareon, Jolteon and Vaporeon. Already had an electric type in Raichu though, and a fire type already had in Charizard, so I thought I needed a good solid water type, so hey, Vaporeon came knocking on the door. So that's 4 of my Mons. Next up, I always caught a Snorlax and put that on my team. Snorlax is an absolute unit, it's just such a good Pokemon, and I mean, hey, in the anime, if it can learn 6 moves at once, then it's doing something right. But no, Snorlax is just super bulky, and it's just always a really good staple on my team. And finishing things off for Kanto, I always had a Dragonite. I always caught Dratini in the Safari Zone. Yes, you can get it in Celadon with Game Corner, but I ain't got enough time to spin those slots to get all the coins. I'd rather just go to the Safari Zone and catch one with my Super Rod. So that's what I always did, and I always got it into a Dragonite before the Elite Four because who wants to use a Dragonair? And fun fact, Dragonite was the first ever Pokemon I got up to level 100 in Pokemon Fire Red. But yeah, that was my Kanto team. Next up, well, of course, heading over to Johto. Johto is one of my favorite regions, if not my favorite. Soul Silver is my favorite game, so I definitely had quite a few good teams in this region. Starting things off, the star Pokemon was always the hardest decision for this region because I absolutely love Chicory, Cyndaquil, and Totodile. That's not to say I didn't love all the Kanto starters as well. Charmander is just one I love most. However, though, I think I probably used Typhlosion a little bit more than Chikorita's Meganium and of course Totodile's Feraligatr. I think I just like the fire type Pokemon more, but I did use all star Pokemon so much. Anyway, I started off with Typhlosion. Next up, I had to get an Ampharos. If you didn't get an Ampharos in Johto, then what are you doing with your life? It's such a good Pokemon that you can get early on. It evolves quickly. It's a good typing. There's not that many good electric types in Johto, so getting a powerful Ampharos on your team at the very start is an absolute solid decision. I mean, what are you doing? Next up, I always got an Espeon. I mean, come on, Espeon is just such a good evolution. Espeon or Umbreon, I mean, whichever floats your boat, they're just so good. Getting the Eevee off Bill, getting that friendship level as high as I could, evolving it into an Espeon in the daytime. Absolutely great Pokemon. I think Espeon also has like a high special attack stat of Generation 2 as well, or something like that. It's just an absolute unit. It just does damage that you need. Next up, I always got a Donphan. Donphan is one of my favorite Pokemon just because it looks awesome. And of course, if you've played Pokemon Stadium 2, you played the mini games. I love the Donphan game where you kind of like spin around the thing and you got to race everyone else's Donphan. It's just such a cool mini game. And since then, I've just always loved Donphan. Next up, I always got a Tyranitar. The pseudo legendary is just an easy decision because it's just so good. I do try and stay away from using legendary Pokemon. And of course, pseudo legendaries don't break that. They're just super broken. But Tyranitar was always a great selection. And finishing things off, yes, I did just say I don't usually use legendary Pokemon, and I don't, but Suicune is my favorite legendary Pokemon, and it had to go on my team, and it's a solid water type as well. Like I say, legendaries aren't great to use because it makes the games a little bit easier. If you want to use them, that's absolutely fine. But at the end of the day, Suicune is just such a good Pokemon. I absolutely loved it, so I had to have him on my team. But that is my team for Johto. Next up, we're heading to the Hoenn region, and I had the same decision with Johto. All the 3-star Pokemon, nothing really stood out for me more than the rest, so I always loved all of them, and it was always difficult. The first time I actually ever played Hoenn was when I was in hospital on an operation, and my brother got Ruby and I got Sapphire, and we actually traded all the Stoat Pokemon at the start, so we all got them. So obviously, he started again, traded me, so I had 2 of each, and then I traded the other 3 back to him, and then that's how it was. And we both started the game with a Mudkip, Torchic, and Trico. Absolutely awesome. However, though, the one I chose the most was probably Trico, and of course evolved it into Sceptile. Next up, Ralts, of course. Gardevoir is such a good Pokemon, so getting an easy Ralts at the start was always great. The problem that I always remember having, though, is the fact that it only knew Growl whenever you first got it, so you had to get it up to like level 5 or 6 to get it to learn Confusion. But once it had that, you sorted it. Absolutely destroyed Brawly. It's just such a good Pokemon at the end of the day. Next up, I always caught a Manectric. Manectric's just such a good electric type Pokemon. You get Electrite relatively early as well. And it's just a solid mon. The design looks incredible. I was always just a huge fan of Manectric. After that, I always caught a Trapinch in the desert and evolved it into a Flygon. It evolves earlier than Salamence. Flygon isn't a pseudo-legendary, but I just always picked it over Salamence. Maybe because it took quite a while to get Bagon in the game and I kind of wanted a good Dragon type early on. But Brava was annoying and Trapinch was annoying to grind up. But once you got the Flygon, I was absolutely sorted. Next up, I always got a... Well, it's difficult because in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, I always got a Whiscash because it's a really cool Pokemon. It had that ground type immunity as well to electric, so that was always great. So I think I always used to choose Whiscash, but since Auras came out and it's much easier to evolve, I always went with Milotic because Milotic is just a better Pokemon than Whiscash in my opinion. I don't have the electric immunity anymore, but I mean I have Manectric as well, so that can take hits, Sceptile can take hits, everything like that. And I just really loved Milotic. It's such a cool Pokemon. It's one of my favorite competitive Pokemon to use. So yeah, in Gen 3, I'd always use Whiscash, but then in Gen 6 in the remix, I'd use Milotic just because it's easier to evolve. And then of course, finishing things off was the pseudo-legendary with this region, Metagross. I always got the Beldum off Steven. You had to level up relatively loads because I think you got it at like level 5, and to get it all the way up to like 50 or 55 to get a Metagross definitely wasn't easy, but when you did, Metagross was just such a good Pokemon, and it always had to have a spot on my team. But yeah, that's my Hoenn team. Next up, we're heading over to 4th Gen, home of Sinnoh, one of the best regions, in my opinion, if not the best. And the team that I had for this region is probably one of my favorite of all time. It was just such a cool team. Starting things off in Sinnoh, I always had to go with Chimchar, because Infernape is just such a cool Pokemon. I love the design of it. I love little Chimchars crying and like that. Just a big fan of it. I do like Empoleon and Torterra as well. Just Infernape always took the gold from me. Next up, I always caught a Starly literally right after I got Chimchar, because who doesn't like Staraptor? Getting things like close combat, you know, it's got such good abilities, it's got such good moveset, stats, everything like that. It's just a really good Pokemon. And then after that, I caught Luxray as well. Well, there's a Shinx starting off. So I'd already had like half my team, and I hadn't even left like Route 1 yet. It was just a ridiculously good team that you could get so early on. Next up, I always got a Leafeon. I got Eevee, and then I obviously evolved it like the Moss Rock thing to get Leafeon, because whenever a new evolution comes out, you have to use it. It's kind of illegal if you don't use it. So hopefully if one comes out in Generation 8, well, you know I'm going to be using it. You already know it. Better be Dragon type as well, or I'm going to be annoyed. After that, I always got a Lucario. Lucario is just such a cool Pokemon. Steel Fighting, it looks incredible. It has a really good move pool. Stats as well. Everything about Lucario is just absolutely wild, and it was just always a solid mon on my team. And then finishing things off, I had to have another pseudo-legendary. Garchomp had to be on the team. We all know how powerful Cynthia's Garchomp is. An absolute powerhouse. So having that on your own team, just knew that you were going to get a couple of W's here and there. But Sinnoh was just such a good region for teams. There's just so many good Pokemon in this region. So it was difficult to have a team of just 6. But at the end of the day, this was my team for Sinnoh. Next up, we're in Generation 5, home of Unova. Unova was definitely a region that I didn't really like too much. I still like the region. It's just the Pokemon in this region were difficult to make a good team out of, in my opinion. But I always started off with Serperior. Snivy was just better than the rest, in my opinion, and I love the design of Serperior. It's fast, bulky, and it's relatively hard as well. Obviously, getting Contrary was just absolutely broken, but this was before that, so it was still a cool Pokemon, but I just preferred it to Emboar and Samurott. So yeah, I had Serperior. Next up, I always got a Conkeldurr. Obviously, being a trade evolution, that was always fine though, because my brother always had a DS, so I could always trade with him. But yeah, Conkeldurr is just such a good mon. It obviously hits super hard, has some really, really nice abilities, gets a really, really cool move pool as well. But yeah, Conkeldurr is just an absolute monster. Talking about monsters there, you already know I got Crocodile on my team as well. Intimidate or Moxie, whichever floats your boat. This Pokemon has incredible abilities. It's got a really cool moveset. It's got a really cool typing. Everything about Crocodile just looks absolutely wild, and I absolutely love this Pokemon. For my fire type, I always used Darmanitan. Darmanitan was just a Pokemon that hit hard, and that's kind of what you wanted on this team. There weren't actually that many good fire types in Generation 5, if I do believe, well, at least new fire types. So picking a new one was always difficult, but Darmanitan always filled that spot. Not one of my favorite Pokemon, they're just always a solid mon that would always usually help out in like tough situations. After that, I've got Seismitoad. Tympole was a Pokemon that I always used to forget about, really. And then obviously it evolved into Palpitoad and then Seismitoad. Seismitoad obviously being a water ground type. Great for electric immunity, so that's all good. But yeah, it's just a really solid water type at the end of the day, and I'm a big fan of it, and it always had a spot on my team. I'm finishing things off, not the pseudo-legendary of the region for once. What's going on? I actually used a Pokemon team without any pseudo-legendaries. Crazy talk. But of course, it is Haxorus. Haxorus is just such a cool Pokemon. Definitely needs a Mega Evolution in the future, because it just would look amazing. But Haxorus, just straight off the bat, I absolutely fell in love with it. Its shiny is incredible, and it's like a free shiny Pokemon you get as well if you complete the Pokedex. I think in like Black 2 and White 2. So that's always great, because hey, you don't love free shiny Pokemon, especially when they look as good as Haxorus. But it was just such a cool mon at the end of the day, great dragon type. And yeah, that was my team for Unova. Next up is 6th generation, home of the Kalos region. Now, of course, as we all know, Kalos did not offer that many new Pokemon, and when I play through a new Pokemon game, I like to use new Pokemon, so building a team around these Pokemon wasn't actually that easy because there just wasn't that many good selections. However, though, my star Pokemon was always Froakie into a Greninja. I mean, I say always, but the first ever time I actually played through Kalos, I chose Chespin, and then it evolved into Qualadin, and I was like, nah, you need to go back to Chespin. And then it evolved again, and I was just like, not really a big fan of this Pokemon, and I actually put it in my PC box. Chestnut is the first ever star Pokemon I've boxed in the PC after it evolving. I just didn't like it that at all. I just don't like Chestnut at all. I think the design's awful and nothing like that. So yeah, after that, it was always Greninja. Next up, I always had to have a Sylveon. Sylveon, of course, being a new evolution, why wouldn't you have it? And Sylveon's absolutely broken. Sylveon is such a good mon. By far the best competitive evolution. Sylveon is just a ridiculous mon. And it was a fairy type as well. It was a brand new typing. Had to have it on my team. Next up, we have Aegislash. Catching a Hoenn was always awesome. Seeing this new Pokemon, it's a sword and shield. Who doesn't like that? And then obviously evolving to Aegislash with King Shield. That thing is so broken. And it just made the game super easy, obviously, first time I played it. I didn't choose Aegislash again really that much after, just because it was too broken and I kind of wanted a bit of a challenge. But Aegislash is just a really, really good Pokemon. Steel and Ghost as well. What a great typing. Next up, I always had Go-Go. Go-Go was a really cool grass type in my opinion. Definitely one of my favorite grass types as well. I really like the design of it. Looks awesome. Hits hard, gets horny, something like that. Great moves. I just really am a big fan of Go-Go. I think it looks really, really cool. And it was always a solid grass type Pokemon on my team, especially when there's not that many grass types in Kalos. Coming up for my fire type is Pyro. Something I always forgot about Pyro is that it's actually a normal fire type. It's not just fire. So whenever I've been in battle with it, I always, use a ghost type move on it if I'm in that situation. I'm like, oh wait, it's normal. It don't affect. So that was always a problem. But obviously when Pyro was on my team, I was a big fan. Having the obviously male and female gender difference was really cool as well. I'm not sure which I like more, maybe the male version, but either way, a Pyro was always on my team. Just a really solid mon, and I was a big fan of this fire type. But finishing things off though, with the last spot on my Kalos team was Heliolisk, just a really cool electric type. Learned some pretty cool moves, nice stats, very, very fast. hits hard. I was just a big fan of Heliolisk, and obviously getting its easy shiny as well in the wormholes in Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon was always great as well. But of course, for Kalos, Heliolisk always had to be on my team. Next up, we have the Alola region, the latest region we've been given based on Hawaii. It's sunny all the time. My star Pokemon for this region has to be Litten. Torracat is my second favorite Pokemon of all time, so you already know I had to get Litten. I've chose all star Pokemon, they're all really cool. I like, obviously, Rowlet's just such a cute little Pokemon. Popplio is awesome as well, but obviously Torracat, second favorite Pokemon, I have to stay true to it. A lot of the time I didn't want to evolve it, but I always did evolve into Incineroar just because I needed the more powerful Pokemon, but Torracat is still my second favorite Pokemon of all time. Next up had to be Lycanroc. Rockruff is just such a cool little Pokemon. It's definitely one of my favorite rock types. Lycanroc isn't my favorite rock type, so I always had to catch it. And obviously getting the Dusk form as well was always on my team in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. But Lycanroc's just a really cool Pokemon at the end of the day. Both forms, all three forms are really, really good. Next up, we have Serena. I think that's how you call it, or it's a Serena or something like that. The grass type that's kicking things for fun. A really, really cool Pokemon. Big fan of it. It's just a solid grass type. It hits really hard. It's one of the better grass types in the compared to Sinnoh, in my opinion. Always a solid grass type Pokemon at the end of the day. Next up had Mimikyu. Why would you not have Mimikyu on your team? It basically gets a free substitute Ghost Fairy. It can set up on any turn. It gets its own Z move. It's just a solid mod at the end of the day. Mimikyu is awesome, and hopefully one day we find out what it's hiding under its kind of like costume thing. Next up, I always had Vikavolt. Obviously, always being a problem because I couldn't evolve it till like quite late on in the game. So I was kind of stuck with a Charger Book for a while, but I never really used it until I evolved it into a Vikavolt. It just kind of sat in the back and just ate XP whenever it was hungry with the XP share, and that's just kind of what happened until it evolved into Vikavolt. And last but not least, the final Pokemon on my team is Gliscopod. Gliscopod was just such a good Pokemon. Whenever I saw it on Guzman's team, I was like, I need to get some of that because that thing's powerful. Obviously, Emergency Exit was a little bit annoying whenever I got like critted or anything like that, but that's just what happens in the day. It's just still a really cool Pokemon, gets priority, hits hard, looks awesome, and I always had to have it on my team. But with that, it does wrap up today's video. That is my team for every single region. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said at the start, let me know what your teams were for every single region. I would love to see what you guys have come up with. Drop a like as well, guys, if you did enjoy today's video. I really do appreciate it. Really is about the video, the channel, all that good stuff. I do have a couple other videos coming to your screen in a second as well, so be sure to give them a watch if you do have the time. But that is everything from me though, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing rest of your day. Stay safe, and until next time, guys, peace.